I regret any trouble this may cause, but I'm not feeling my best today. Could I possibly take a brief break? It's unfortunate that I'm feeling unwell, especially since I'm working from home and have an online meeting scheduled. Despite feeling awkward about making this request, I appreciate your understanding. Given my pregnancy, it's kind of you to suggest a break. Let's pause for 45 minutes and resume afterward. I am truly grateful for your empathy and flexibility. Normally, such a break might not be permitted, but under the circumstances, I've decided to accept your offer. Resting should help me recover and return to work refreshed. I've set my alarm for a 30-minute nap, hoping it will do the trick. However, just as I was about to drift off, my mother-in-law unexpectedly entered my room, visibly upset. She accused me of neglecting my household duties in favor of spending time on my computer. Despite my attempts to explain that I was actually working and merely taking a necessary break due to my severe morning sickness, she didn't seem to believe me. Her reaction was harsh, criticizing me for what she perceived as laziness. In her anger, she misunderstood my situation entirely, even resorting to physical aggression, which was both shocking and dangerous, especially considering my pregnancy. Despite my pleas, she continued, misunderstanding my attempts to explain as backtalk. This confrontation escalated to a point where I felt my safety and that of my unborn child was at risk. Regrettably, I had to cancel the meeting abruptly to address this urgent situation. Just then, a concerned voice from my computer inquired about the commotion, momentarily catching my mother-in-law off guard. Her anger shifted to surprise. To give you a bit of background about myself, my name is Safia, and I'm 30 years old. After completing my education at a vocational school, I embarked on a career in it. Despite my qualifications, I found the job challenging and often doubted my abilities, feeling overwhelmed and considering leaving my position. However, around 4 years into my role, just as I was about to discuss my resignation due to the toll it was taking on me both physically and mentally, my boss proposed a different path. He recognized my contributions and offered me the opportunity to lead a new project, acknowledging my hard work and potential. This was a pivotal moment in my career. Feeling uncertain, I shared my doubts with my boss, confessing that taking on a new project seemed daunting, especially since I was on the verge of resigning. I couldn't imagine anyone entrusting me with such a significant responsibility given my hesitations. To my surprise, my boss reassured me, stating that it's natural not to be able to tackle everything alone, and that teamwork was the key to success. He mentioned he had already found a collaborator for me, and excused himself to fetch my new partner. The wait filled me with curiosity and a bit of anxiety about who my boss would bring. About 22 minutes later, he returned, introducing me to Jerry, my project partner. Jerry greeted me with a friendly smile, and I was immediately struck by his warm presence and good looks. As we got acquainted, I learned that Jerry, despite being from a different department, had an excellent reputation and was well regarded by both his peers and juniors. Our boss tasked us with making the project a success and left us to decide our approach. Alone with Jerry, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves, expressing my hope that I wouldn't hinder our progress. Jerry, ever the optimist, assured me we'd support each other and succeed together. Working with Jerry was a breath of fresh air. He excelled in interactions with clients, handling sales and presentations, while I focused on the technical aspects, developing systems as needed. Our collaboration not only pushed the project forward but also brought us closer personally. We began spending time together outside of work, enjoying each other's company in a more relaxed setting, which naturally evolved into a romantic relationship. 2 months later, we successfully completed the project, earning recognition within the company. This reinforced my belief in my professional abilities and the value of perseverance. 2 years into our relationship, Jerry proposed, expressing his desire for my support in all aspects of life. Despite my limited experience in relationships, I was touched by his commitment. Feeling more content than ever, I happily accepted his proposal. Eager to share our happiness, we visited Jerry's family home to introduce ourselves. Upon arrival, Jerry's father welcomed us warmly, complimenting my appearance and inviting us in with open arms. His kindness made me optimistic about meeting my mother-in-law, hoping she would be just as welcoming. As we made our way to the living room, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nerves about the new chapter in my life. Upon meeting my mother-in-law for the first time, I introduced myself with enthusiasm and respect, hoping for a warm reception. However, she seemed to dismiss my presence, focusing on the television instead of acknowledging me. It was Jerry who pointed out my attempt to greet her, prompting her to finally acknowledge us, albeit with a clear preference for her son over me. Jerry suggested overlooking his mother's cold reception and invited me to join them on the sofa, aiming to ease into a more formal introduction and discussion about our relationship. When the topic of our marriage came to light, his mother's reaction was far from supportive. She openly expressed her disapproval of me as Jerry's partner, attributing her stance to our differing backgrounds and implying that our values would be incompatible due to our disparate financial upbringings. Her words were a blunt dismissal of the possibility of our union, suggesting that my humble beginnings and Jerry's affluent lifestyle would prevent me from fitting into their family. Despite the shock and hurt her judgment caused, I struggled to formulate a response, feeling overwhelmed by the situation. Jerry and his father immediately came to my defense, challenging the notion that our differing backgrounds could dictate the success of our relationship. Jerry's objection to his mother's harsh words showed his commitment to us, and his father attempted to mediate the tension. Yet my mother-in-law remained unconvinced, setting forth a condition that caught us all off guard. She demanded that if we were to marry, I must agree to live with them in their family home. This unexpected ultimatum was her way of granting her approval for our marriage, placing me in a difficult position. The thought of not starting our married life independently as I had hoped was disheartening. However, understanding the importance of family and the commitments that come with marriage, I agreed to her terms. I assured her of my readiness to embrace all responsibilities, including caring for her and my father-in-law when needed. My declaration surprised everyone, especially Jerry and his father, who likely did not anticipate my willingness to comply with such a significant request. I made it clear that my commitment to Jerry extended beyond our immediate happiness to include the well-being of his family. With a heavy heart yet determined resolve, I asked for her approval once more, hoping this gesture would bridge the gap between us and allow us to move forward as a family. Agreeing to my mother-in-law's condition, I found myself securing her approval for our marriage. She asked me to look after them, which I promised to do, marking the end of our initial tense introduction. Despite my reservations about living with my in-laws, the presence of Jerry and the support of my father-in-law gave me hope that things might turn out fine. Fast forward 8 months, Jerry and I were married, and I moved into his parents' house as agreed. The first few months passed with little incident. My mother-in-law remained mostly silent, perhaps taking the time to observe my integration into their household. Aware of her watchful eyes, I diligently managed household chores alongside my full-time job, hoping to avoid any cause for complaint. One morning, as I was about to leave for work, my mother-in-law stopped me, indicating she wanted to have a discussion. Anticipating a lengthy conversation, I braced myself for what lay ahead. I promptly informed my boss that I would be late, as my mother-in-law chose to discuss my pregnancy, a topic not surprising given Jerry and I had been planning for our family's future. I was prepared for her thoughts, expecting her to suggest I quit my job to focus on the pregnancy and eventual motherhood. Indeed, she voiced exactly that opinion, arguing that I should leave my job immediately. This stance was difficult for me to accept. Before marrying Jerry, quitting might have seemed like a plausible option. However, my work had become a significant part of my identity and happiness. Moreover, with a baby on the way, the financial stability my job provided felt more crucial than ever. Despite my reasoning, my mother-in-law persisted, criticizing my decision to work and even my ability to manage household tasks. Her harsh words began to take a toll on my well-being. The conversation stretched on, and as time ticked away, I realized I was significantly late for work. Feeling cornered, I acknowledged her demand to quit my job, though I had no real intention of doing so. This concession was meant to end the immediate confrontation, but my mother-in-law pushed further, insisting I inform my employer of my resignation that very day. This left me in a difficult position, outwardly agreeing while internally conflicted about my next steps. After arriving at work significantly late, I couldn't shake off the unease clouding my thoughts. Seated at my desk, I found myself voicing my worries under my breath, catching the attention of my boss, who could tell something was amiss. Despite my attempts to dismiss his concerns, he saw through my facade and guided me to a secluded conference room for a private discussion. Reluctantly, I opened up about the dilemma I was facing at home. My mother-in-law had sternly advised me to quit my job due to my pregnancy, insisting that it was for the best. Yet, the thought of leaving my job felt wrong to me. I wish to continue working, I told my boss. He listened intently, absorbing the complexity of my situation before falling into a contemplative silence. It wasn't long before a solution sparked in his mind. He proposed the idea of remote work, suggesting that it could be a viable compromise. Working from home would shield me from my mother-in-law's scrutiny and allow me to continue my professional duties without the physical strain of commuting. The idea resonated with me as a potential win-win solution. When I arrived home that evening, I was met with a stern-faced mother-in-law who seemed prepared for a confrontation. She questioned me about quitting my job, to which I explained my new arrangement of working from home. Her response was less intense than I anticipated, allowing me to sigh in relief, albeit temporarily. I was thankful for my employer's flexibility, but little did I know this change would soon introduce a new set of challenges. The very next day, my mother-in-law's attempts to assert her presence in my new work environment began with an early wake-up call that was far from necessary. Her loud demands disrupted my sleep at 6:50. A stark reminder of the delicate balance I would need to maintain between my work responsibilities and my new living situation. As I tried to ignore her and catch a few more moments of rest, I realized that navigating this new arrangement would require patience and resilience. Despite my best efforts to ignore her persistent calls, my mother-in-law's voice eventually became so loud that it risked waking my husband. Wanting to avoid causing him any inconvenience, reluctantly, I left the warmth of my bed and headed to the living room to address her demands. "What's going on?" "It's only 6:00 in the morning," I questioned, only to be met with her insistence that it was already time to start the day and prepare breakfast. A task she deemed overdue by her standards. Her logic seemed flawed to me. Breakfast was usually a later morning activity in our household. Yet, according to her, she had been patient with me up until this point, allowing me to sleep because I had to go to work. But now, with me working from home, she expected me to rise early every day for breakfast duties. Despite my internal objections, I found myself in the kitchen, starting the day far earlier than necessary, preparing breakfast under her watchful eye. After announcing that breakfast was ready, my mother-in-law criticized both the timeliness and quality of the meal, particularly targeting the soup for being too salty. Defending my cooking, I tried to explain that I had followed the usual recipe, but her mind seemed made up. Using this as a pretext, she offered me a lesson in housekeeping, a proposal I accepted with a heavy heart, hoping to keep the peace. Her lessons soon proved to be a series of exhaustive demands that extended well beyond the kitchen. Once my husband and father-in-law departed for work, I had hoped to start my remote work. However, my mother-in-law had other plans, insisting on a thorough completion of household chores before I could even think about sitting down at my computer. Her understanding of work was fundamentally different from mine, equating value only with physical labor and dismissing the legitimacy of remote work as inconsequential. Feeling cornered, I complied with her instructions, putting aside my professional responsibilities to tackle the cleaning and laundry. Despite her continuous dissatisfaction with my efforts, she demanded a level of cleanliness that she herself did not adhere to. criticizing my use of the vacuum and insisting on more traditional methods of cleaning, which consumed even more of my time. After hours of household chores, I finally returned to my desk, eager to catch up on my work. Yet the reprieve was short-lived. My mother-in-law's voice soon echoed once again, summoning me from my work with an urgency that left me wondering what possible task awaited me this time. The cycle of interruptions made it clear that balancing my remote work with her expectations was going to be an ongoing challenge, requiring patience, tact, and perhaps a new strategy. My attempts to balance work with my mother-in-law's demands reached a boiling point when she interrupted me once again, asking for tea while I was deeply engrossed in my work. Frustrated and unable to contain my feelings any longer, I asked if she could possibly make it herself, given that I was in the middle of something important. This honest expression of my boundaries was met with an exaggeratedly negative response from her, accusing me of being disrespectful and lazy, mistaking my work on the computer for leisure. The situation escalated quickly when, in a burst of anger, she physically grabbed my shirt. Although she didn't go as far as to hit me, the threat of violence hung heavily in the air. I managed to defuse the situation with an apology, but this incident marked a turning point. From then on, my mother-in-law seemed to assert her dominance more aggressively, summoning me for increasingly petty tasks and treating me more like a servant than a family member. Despite pleading with my husband and father-in-law to intervene, their presence did little to curb her behavior, as she cleverly concealed her true nature around them. Months of enduring this treatment left me both physically and emotionally drained. However, a particularly distressing incident occurred on a day when I had diligently completed all my chores early in anticipation of an important online meeting. Just as the meeting was about to start, feeling suddenly unwell, I had to request a short break during the meeting, which was kindly granted by the meeting leader. As I lay down to rest, my room door flew open, and my mother-in-law stormed in, accusing me of shirking my duties under the guise of work. Despite my attempts to explain that I was genuinely unwell and had already completed the household tasks, she launched into a tirade, questioning the legitimacy of my work and accusing me of lying. Her anger escalated to a shocking act of violence as she began to physically assault me, endangering not just my well-being but also that of my unborn child. In a desperate attempt to protect myself and my baby, I had no choice but to cancel the meeting and seek safety. In this moment of crisis, a voice from my computer offered a brief distraction, but it did little to deter my mother-in-law's fury. Her actions, driven by misunderstanding and a refusal to acknowledge the legitimacy of my work and health needs, underscored the severity of the situation, leaving me in a position where I had to re-evaluate my living situation and seek a resolution to ensure the safety and well-being of both myself and my child. In a dramatic turn of events, my confrontation with my mother-in-law reached its climax when, after enduring months of mistreatment, an unexpected outlet emerged. As I lay on the bed feeling vulnerable and wronged, my plea for help was unexpectedly broadcasted through the open meeting screen, capturing the attention of my father-in-law, who witnessed the entire ordeal. Reacting swiftly to what he had seen, my father-in-law rushed home, determined to put an end to the abuse. The room was charged with tension as he confronted my mother-in-law, demanding an explanation for her actions. His presence was formidable, echoing the authority he wielded in his professional life. Yet it was clear that his outrage stemmed from a place of protective concern for both me and the unborn child. My mother-in-law, caught off guard and unable to justify her behavior, attempted to defend herself. The situation escalated when my father-in-law revealed his direct involvement in the project that had brought me into the meeting, a project that symbolized a collaborative effort between our companies and highlighted the importance of my work. The revelation that my professional contributions were integral to a project of such significance seemed to momentarily shift the power dynamics within the room. Yet the scene took a concerning turn when, in a moment of misguided retribution, my father-in-law mimicked my mother-in-law's earlier actions against me. Despite his intentions, I couldn't condone the violence and intervened, urging him to stop. Grateful for his support but unwilling to see harm come to anyone else in the aftermath, I found the courage to address my mother-in-law directly, challenging her dismissive attitude toward my work and asserting my autonomy. I explained the necessity of my job and the steps I had taken to adapt my working conditions, emphasizing that her demands had repercussions beyond our household. My words were an assertion of my independence, that I was neither her servant nor someone to be belittled or controlled. Her response to my defiance was predictable, yet in that moment, I stood my ground, empowered by the validation of my work and the support of my family. The confrontation served as a pivotal moment, one that redefined the boundaries within our household and marked a new chapter in my journey toward balancing my professional ambitions with my personal life. In a moment of confrontation, I stood my ground against my mother-in-law's attempt to physically intimidate me once more. Instead of succumbing to fear, I firmly caught her wrist, warning her against underestimating me due to my apparent calm demeanor. My assertion of self-defense seemed to take her by surprise, leading to a moment of realization for her. She looked defeated and agreed to my request to inform the person in charge of the meeting about its cancellation, allowing me some peace to concentrate on my work. Later, as my father-in-law returned to his professional commitments, I noticed a significant shift in my mother-in-law's behavior. She no longer interfered with me. This newfound tranquility allowed me to make remarkable progress in my work, undisturbed, a stark contrast to the previous months of constant interruptions. That evening, as I was preparing dinner, my husband and father-in-law arrived home. My husband, having been briefed by his father about the day's events, expressed concern for my well-being. Despite the tension, I reassured him that I was all right. However, he felt a family discussion was necessary and summoned everyone to the living room. As we gathered, the atmosphere was tense, especially around my mother-in-law, who seemed anxious about the impending conversation. My husband directly addressed the day's events, prompting my mother-in-law to admit her actions. This confession seemed to weigh heavily on him, marking a moment of realization about the extent of her behavior towards me. The silence was then broken by my father-in-law's declaration of his intention to divorce, acknowledging his part in allowing the situation to escalate to this point. The announcement shocked everyone, especially my mother-in-law, who pleaded for reconsideration. However, my father-in-law stood firm in his decision. The following days saw the agreement of the divorce being put into action, with plans to remove my mother-in-law from the home. As she prepared to leave, burdened with her belongings, she sought closure, thanking me for the time spent together. At this moment, I felt compelled to address her one last time, not out of forgiveness but perhaps to offer a final piece of advice or closure. Her expression shifted as she turned back at my call, possibly hoping for a last-minute reprieve or reconciliation. However, my words for her were not forgiveness but a reminder of the consequences of her actions, emphasizing the importance of respect and understanding within a family. This encounter, though brief, was a poignant reminder of the complex dynamics that had unfolded and the transformative journey we had all embarked on as a result of these tumultuous events. After my mother-in-law left the house, carrying the weight of her actions and the consequences they brought, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and contemplation. The idea of seeking legal action against her crossed my mind, especially after her reckless behavior. But I chose a path of restraint instead. I sought reassurance from my father-in-law, wondering if the decision for him to divorce her was truly what he wanted. His response, filled with regret for not recognizing her true nature sooner, affirmed the necessity of the separation. In the weeks that followed, the absence of my mother-in-law brought newfound peace to the household. My work flourished without interruption, and the project initiated by my father-in-law's company progressed smoothly. While curiosity about my mother-in-law's current situation lingered, it was a distant concern compared to the tranquility and focus I now enjoyed. The question of her well-being finally found its moment over dinner one evening when my husband inquired about her. My father-in-law, with a hint of concern and curiosity in his voice, shared that he had visited her. The description of her living conditions, marked by disarray and convenience store meals, painted a stark contrast to the life she once led. Her current employment at a supermarket supplemented by a pension, suggested a significant adjustment from her previous lifestyle. This revelation brought mixed emotions. While there was a part of me that felt vindicated, another part couldn't help but reflect on the drastic changes she had undergone. The knowledge that she was struggling did not bring joy, but a complex sense of closure. The focus now shifted to the future, particularly to the arrival of our daughter. The commitment to providing a nurturing, positive environment for her became my primary focus, ensuring she would grow up in a household defined by love, respect, and stability, far removed from the turmoil of the past. As I anticipated the birth of our daughter, the resolve to shield her from negative influences strengthened. The experience with my mother-in-law served as a poignant reminder of the values and environment I wished to cultivate for our growing family. With this vision in mind, I look forward to welcoming our new addition with optimism and open arms.